There are like certain moments or phases, stages in a person's life where they enter the dimension of death. I remember when I was at the monastery, we had all these really old students and monks and Oshos. And everybody just seemed to be getting older and older and older. And then within a span of maybe 3 months, like the Grim Reaper, we heard this knocking on the door, and I'm being metaphorical, in the Zendo, and like the shoji, who's one of the officers in a meditation hall, got up and opened the door, and then we all saw this Sith come through. And the Grim Reaper entered the Zendo and just started sithing all these oldies. And we had in a span of 2 months, 8 or 9 people, bam, 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 dead. In my experience, when you're in that death dimension, when someone you know is dying, or a few people are dying, or you yourself are dying, in my experience, things can get strange. Like you have really synchronistic experiences that are just totally inexplicable. You can have incredibly intense dreams. You can be visited in an envisioning of some kind, maybe in a dream, or maybe it's just in a waking dream, or a deep memory of some kind. Death is this great, big, mysterious, unknown territory that in our society we just kind of pretend doesn't really matter, right? And then when it comes around and we have to deal with it and deal with the energies that come from a death, when that door opens and that other side appears in some capacity, we're not prepared, even remotely ready for it. One reason, the big reason, I think, that we go to religions, that we stay in the faiths of our childhood or find new spiritual disciplines, is because we're trying to get answers to the questions we have around death, baby. What happens to us after we die? My girlfriend's uncle died not too long ago, before Christmas. And he'd been sick for a while, and then he'd had some health problems, actually had half of one of his legs removed, was very cheery and had a twinkle in his eye, and lived out those final period of his life with, it seemed to me, a pretty sparkling attitude. And then he died. And this past Christmas, my girlfriend and her son and I sat down with my girlfriend's aunt and her cousin. The aunt was married to the uncle who died. And we were talking about the uncle and sharing stories. And my girlfriend's aunt kept going into the kitchen and kept cutting kaki. I forget what the word is in English. Not pomegranate. I'll put the word right here. And she would bring it to us and we would eat it. And then she would go in the kitchen, she would cut another one, and she would bring it to us and we would eat it. And we were talking to the cousin, and the aunt was grieving. And it's interesting, in Croatia they still wear black. It's very traditional mourning, and they were wearing black. And the aunt, my girlfriend's aunt, she had such vibrant energy and such an openness to her face. And death, it seemed to me, had just washed through her. I mean, she's 80, and she had been married to her husband since she was 20. I mean, it's an astonishingly long and successful marriage, and then he just died. And she had this look in her eye of a kind of aliveness, a kind of shock, and a kind of brightness. She's an incredibly intelligent, well-read, sharp woman. Like, she and my girlfriend are always sharing books, and she introduced my girlfriend to the Neapolitan trilogy, Elena Ferrante, and my girlfriend read all of them like in a week, right? They're always trading ideas. And before we left that night, I looked the aunt in the face, and my girlfriend was looking at her too, and we both turned to each other, and my girlfriend said, "What do you do to have such amazing skin?" She's like, "I want my skin to look like yours." And it was true. The aunt looked like she was like 65 years old, and she's 80. And then we were saying our goodbyes, and the aunt is a little bit formal, and I'm never sure what the heck to do in Europe. Like, do you give them the hug and then you do the kisses on both cheeks, or just one cheek? Or I never know. Kissing isn't really an American thing. And so I kind of wound up just, you're coming in and you're not sure, and I wound up shaking her hand. And then I was walking down the and I was like cringing, right? Because I'm like walking down the stairwell. I'm like, I should have given her a hug. That was so cold. Her husband just died. And I've got this, guilt in my head, and I'm swarming with this social situation. And that was at Christmas, right? Yesterday, they just held a funeral for that woman, for the aunt. She just died. She had great skin. We thought she was going to live for another 10 or 15 years. A moment of time. I'm walking down the stairs worrying about a human world social situation, nervous and scared and feeling like I'm uptight and I didn't respond properly. I should have given her a hug. And today, she's gone. She was buried in the ground yesterday. My relationship with her is buried in the ground, right? That's the thing that happens when somebody dies, is they take all the problems and all the love that you two shared together. They take your relationship with them into the ground, and that relationship dissolves into the earth and is gone. Meanwhile, I had a patron over on patreon.com/showsonjackobner message me the other day and tell me that his cancer has gone not into remission, the opposite of remission. It's metastasized, I guess. It's spread. And he said, let's stay in touch. He said, I probably only have a few more months to live. And he was expressing some of his concerns. And I'm very grateful, I guess, that he felt like I was someone that he could share these with. Because when someone who is in his position shares what that position is, you really get some clarity on what's important quick. I mean, he told me that he's, he loves his wife and his daughter, and now he's not going to get to see them anymore. It's so simple. Just like that, the most important things in his life become abundantly clear. Wife, daughter. He's afraid. He wants to know what's going to happen when he leaves his body. That's how he put it. So today I want to just very briefly share a little bit about the Tathagata Zen perspective on death. So Tathagata Zen was the kind of Zen that my teacher taught. We're not going to be coming to any hard and fast conclusions here today. There are schools of Buddhism that give you very detailed maps of what happens after you die. I have a friend who's very deep in the Tibetan lineage, and several months ago, she took me through the whole process of dying and the layers of death and the stages of death and the path path and the mandala map work of a death. I find that stuff fascinating. I'm not fully drawn into it. It's not my journey. Neither is the heaven and hell Christian Catholic schema that I was taught when I was young appealing to me anymore. There are things suggested by Tathagata Zen when it comes to death that I find useful when thinking about and processing and dealing with death. And so I just want to share a few of those things with you here today. So for starters, I just want to say that the news is not bad. Like, I never got the impression ever from working with my teacher and with priests in my tradition, people who were deep in the practice, I never ever got any kind of a nihilistic or terrifying perspective on death, okay? Like, people had really good attitudes and dispositions towards death. I was on a lot of deathbeds, and I saw a lot of monks and nuns and my teacher, the Roshi, on deathbeds. And you can tell a lot about how people think and feel about death from how they behave on deathbeds. And frankly, like, the news is good on some level. Like, there are no answers to the problem, like, it's a mystery. Death it really is a mystery. I mean, there's that quote, I've used it before in Zen Confidential. Somebody asks a Zen master, what happens to me after I die? And the Zen master says, why are you asking me? And what does the student say? The student says, because you're a Zen master. And the Zen master says, yeah, but I'm not a dead Zen master. That's kind of the attitude about death when it comes to Zen, right? Playful and accepting without... it's not like a Zen master is ChatGPT and you ask it what happens after you die and it gives you a nice, clean, clear answer. But there are some principles in Tathagata Zen that can help us process our fears around death. So let's start like big. You know, is there a God in Zen? Well, there is something my teacher would refer to, a condition. The condition of the source is how he would sometimes refer to it, or he would refer to it as the absolute. The big picture is how I might put it. The technical term could be the Dharmakaya. And the way that the absolute is referred to in Tathagata Zen is instructive. My teacher would say, if you are, like, if you have in your head or your belief system or your religion a God with will and desire, that is not a Buddhist God. So this is like a very clear distinction between the Tathagata Zen teachings on the source or the absolute, the big picture, and like a Western Christian Catholic teaching. And I mean, we could sit all day and contemplate and ponder and study that distinction because it's like huge and it's really important. So in the Buddhist idea or the Tathagata Zen idea that I was taught about, quote, God, this God does not have will and does not have desire. So there's no will and no desire. God doesn't, desire you to be good, and he did not create you and this universe through an act of will. It's a will-less, desireless activity, the condition of the source. And yet we have will and desire. And so one of the teachings in Tathagata Zen that I was given was all of us who are born with will and desire are born from this condition that is without will and without desire. And what my teacher taught is that in order to encounter the absolute, we have to dissolve our wills and dissolve our desires. Or dissolve ourselves. So what does this mean, to dissolve our wills and desires, or to dissolve ourselves? How do we do that? Well, one of the things that Tathagata Zen teaches, near as I can tell, to the best of my knowledge and experience, which is limited. What was I going to say? One of the things that Tathagata Zen teaches is that all the things of the cosmos are born from this will-less, desireless condition. So my teacher would say the Dharma activity, he would say it splits itself apart, and from that separating of itself, everything arises from that activity. That's the Dharma activity, or the activity of the absolute. So the absolute manifests as the relative, or that which has will and that which has desire. From the Buddhist point of view that I was taught, God manifests here and now, right now, through one making relationship with one's surroundings, and in so doing, dissolving the will and dissolving the desire. And we can do this when we give ourselves to some activity, right? So think about when we breathe. Breathing is really important, right? You're doing the simplest activity possible with as much sincerity and focus as possible. But the breath is like really, really important. Everything is in the breath. Like the exhale happens, right? And you're sort of exhaling, but it's also sort of happening on its own, right? So there's like will, and it's also will-less, right? But you do the activity completely, and you come to the end of it, and then there's this moment that is without will and without desire, and the exhale stops, and the inhale is not quite yet born. There's this infinite vanishing point and this infinite arising from it. It's not clear, like from a logical perspective, where like exactly the exhale ends and the inhale begins, right? There's not a very clear boundary or distinction. And like just in this moment that we have in life where we're always exhaling, coming to the end of an exhale, and always inhaling, coming to the end of the inhale, exhaling, inhaling. The death of the exhale, the birth of the inhale. So we experience this desireless, will-less, 0 point, or boundaryless condition right here in our every moment of our lives when we're breathing. And we experience this death of the self moment after moment after moment. We're just not paying attention. We're always dying. Our mind gets distracted. Where did we go? I mean, it's the first koan you get in Tathagata Zen. Where are you? The question means, where is your source? Where is the true self? Where do you come from? moment after moment. And where do you go? Moment after moment. From what infinite reservoir of shunyata does that desire for a coffee arise from? Where? And where does it go when you're no longer thinking about coffee anymore? So we are born and we're dying, moment after moment after moment. That's the practice of Zen is manifesting that death, and then letting that resurrection or that birth of a new self happen. I was told by Sogen Victor Hori, who almost became a Zen Roshi, but then he became an academic, that these are the only two koans, really, dying and resurrecting. And that's what I learned as well through my work with Sasaki Roshi. So as I talked about before, my teacher taught that there is this zero activity, this condition of the absolute. The condition of the absolute splits apart, right? And it splits into two opposing but complementary activities. And they can be described as plus and minus, or affirmation and negation, or he has talked about them gendered way, male or female. We can talk about them directionally, up and down, east and south, north and west. Am I getting that right? And he has talked about them in terms of the living and the dying, or the living activity and the dying activity. All these opposing but complementary ways of describing this activity, you could say that they're manifest when we breathe. We are literally doing this activity. The opposing but complementary activities of exhale and inhale are working together to give rise to the self, the living, breathing self, moment after moment. So the foundation of our physical person, the interplay between inhale and exhale, is a direct manifestation of the cosmic principle wherein, as I just said, the absolute splits itself apart and comes back together, splits itself apart and comes back together, splits itself apart, gives rise to us, comes back together, and takes us away. So it's a trick question to ask what happens after you die. As far as I can tell, it's a trick question from the Tathagata Zen perspective, because we are living with death. And who knows, when we die, maybe we're dead with life somehow. I've been talking about this with a friend of mine who studied with our teacher, and he often points out to me that our teacher talked about the dying activity. It's not appropriate to think of it as like life after death, but I will just say that it's also not appropriate to just have a purely like secular, materialistic perspective on death from the Zen perspective. Like when you die, like it means lights out, right? No, that's not the Zen perspective. I'm in the death zone right now because of all these experiences around death that I've been having recently, and I'm not dying myself, and so maybe it's easier for me to say this, but my feeling is that death is good. It's as good as life, okay? And I have this sense that when you die, like somewhere in there is satori, enlightenment, like you see God, however you want to put it, right? However you want to put it. And maybe the Christian idea, Muslim idea, Jewish idea, where, you know, if you've got a lot of sins or bad deeds on your conscience, you see something bad. Maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. But I don't know. I just wanted to close with to share an intuition with you that's coming from my contemplations. I've been thinking about death all day, contemplating it all day, trying to come up with a video here. It's taken me all day. I've been reading through my teacher's book, Manifesting Zen, and picking out different things that he said on death. The feeling I've come away with today is that we're like cupped. We're cupped by the absolute. And we're arising from and the absolute, and we're the relative version of the absolute, if you will. And at some point, we return back to that condition. And it is a perfect complement to this life. If we attach to ourselves and to our wanting things to be a certain way and trying to will them to be a certain way, then we're going to suffer when we come upon death, which is the great dissolution. It's the great dissolution of will and desire, which is to say, ego. And in some sense, when we sit on a cushion and do our very simple meditation practice, we're surrendering to the death activity. We're surrendering to the exhale. And then the exhale comes to its end and it dies. Where does it go? It's born in the inhale. And then the inhale is born and we're inhaling, and then, oh my gosh, the inhale activity reaches its conclusion. Where does it go? Really, where does it go? Where does the moment go? Where did my girlfriend's aunt go? She was just there a couple months ago. I was looking in her eyes and I was wondering if I should give her a hug and kiss her on both cheeks, or should I just shake her hand? I was wondering how to connect with her, how to dissolve my ego and my will into a moment of relationship with her. And now she's gone. Where did she go? It's a koan. We'll close with this koan today. It's a good koan. It's a koan of true love, as my teacher used to call it. He used to call everything I've been talking about today, he used to call it the activity of true love. Capital T, capital L. So, thanks for listening. If you want to support this channel, you can go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. There's also a link in the video description for a one-time PayPal donation. I couldn't make these videos without the support of my patrons and the people who have been supporting me on PayPal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't say that often enough, but I'm saying it now. Thank you so much for your support. Lights out, baby. And I'll see you next time.